What could go wrong when you nominate a former Fox News anchor with no experience in government to run the entire Department of Defense? All the things went wrong. While the rest of us are laying tributes to our Chinese spies and mourning the loss of TikTok, Trump's cabinet pick confirmation hearings are underway in the Senate, beginning with Trump's pick to run the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Straight up, this was one of the most excruciating confirmation hearings I've ever seen. And I watched Brett Kavanaugh cry. So that's saying some stuff. Full transparency, I had to shut the thing off at some point for my mental health. But not before I watched a grown man forget one of the names of his 7 children. I mean, I get it, man. I can't remember the email address I gave to the grocery store to get my reward. So children's names, that's hard. Some of the most brutal parts of the confirmation hearing were when Senator Tammy Duckworth asked Pete Hegseth very specific questions, of which most he could not answer. At one point, Pete Hegseth refused to answer a yes or no question, and Senator Duckworth was not having it.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes or no, did you lead an audit?
Stated,
yes or no? What are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
She was like, hey, what are the types of international security agreements that you've led in the past? And which would a Secretary of Defense be leading? And he's like, well, I haven't done that. And she's like, cool, okay, so can you name the ones that the Secretary of Defense would need to do? She's like, pick one, just name one. None of those apply. I get it. It's intimidating having a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel ask you very specific pointed questions on your job interview, but also this woman lost limbs in service to this country, dude. If she says you're not qualified, I feel like you're done. You're done. You're cooked. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But if I showed up to try to get a job at the DOD and the person that was interviewing me was a senator, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel who lost limbs in service to this country, I stress the fact that this woman was hit by a grenade. If she looked at me and said I was unqualified, I would slink under a rock and just die. I would die a slow, pitiful, embarrassed death. If you thought things were already bleak for Pete, buckle in, because Tim Kaine's grilling is a masterpiece of evisceration. To be fair, it is kind of low-hanging fruit to question Pete about alcohol when there are videos like this from Fox News just circling the internet when he's being dunked into a literal vat of champagne on New Year's Eve. Live on TV. Can you imagine this man just running our entire Department of Defense? Do you know what the Department of Defense is? Maybe this is a good time to show you. You can screenshot this, or you can just Google an image of the organizational chart for the Department of Defense so you can see how significant it is. These are all the different directors, the acting directors, the literal army. I don't know why that's so funny. 'Cause bleak, dark humor to cope with these dark times. And then this dude right here is gonna be here running this whole operation. That's what this job interview is for. Okay, so Tim's like, listen, you have this history of allegations about a sexual attack. Do you feel like sexual assault should disqualify you from running this post? Pete won't answer that. He said he's going to stop drinking, but he won't answer whether or not drinking on the job should be a disqualifier for having that federal position. And just as a reminder here, this guy isn't auditioning to be just an ordinary analyst in the government. He's running for the position to lead the entire Department of Defense. So, for their part, Republicans seems entirely unfazed by Pete Hegseth's lack of qualifications, his problematic past, and his absolute inability to thoroughly prepare for something that should be like the biggest job interview you ever go to. So when they do ask him about some of his past problems, like the, sexual attack, he's able to say things like, well, I'm not a perfect person. Thank God for redemption. Like literally, he thanked Jesus and one of his wives. I'm not sure which one. There have been several. I assume not one of the ones he's cheated on, but you know what? Hey, it's 2025. Who can say? Republicans also excused the drunkenness. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen came to the defense of Pete Hegseth and attacked Tim Kaine for suggesting that drinking on the job is a disqualifier. He specifically said, do you know how many people have showed up for a Senate vote and have been drunk? Sir, that's like trying to get out of a speeding ticket by saying everybody else was speeding. Like, you're just advertising bad behavior. That's not okay. We pay you people so much freaking money to show up and do a job, and you're drunk on the job, and then you're acknowledging that you're drunk on the job in front of us as you're taking away our only source of infotainment. That's pretty fucking bold. Also bold. Wait, I didn't mean to use this clip. There's so many. The boldness and audacity of this man to show up for one of the most important positions in this country. And when people point out that he doesn't know things and that he's unqualified, like a typical fragile white man, he gets angry. Can you imagine showing up to a job interview and not knowing the answers to the questions about the roles for the position you're going to occupy potentially? Imagine not knowing things, not preparing. And when the people interviewing you point that out, imagine you being the one that's frustrated and angry and then thinking you're going to get that job. Like, I don't have words to adequately define the level of audacity that this man has risen to. And here's the thing. I also want to point out that Republicans need to be accountable for this, because we know Trump picked a lot of like wackadoos for his cabinet, but there are still Republican members that could challenge that and say, listen, there are some people who are qualified within the Republican Party. Let's put those in front of us first. And they didn't. Instead, they're showing up to this clown show and they're giving this guy softballs, and they may or may not confirm him. And so when people talk about wanting less division in this country, like, I want people to get along, I don't want so much partisan politics, that's fine. I agree. Cool, we're on the same page. But you can't ask me to watch confirmation hearings like this that are so absolutely absurd. Like, if any one of us were in this position and showed up to a job interview like this, we would be fired and probably somehow put on a list. But this man, who is not suited for this position, and he knows that, is being treated with kid gloves. And it's inappropriate. It's embarrassing. Everybody in the world is watching this. I'm allowed to be frustrated by that. If you don't want Democrats to be mad, if you want Democrats to work with Republicans, then you as Republicans need to show up and hold yourselves and your party accountable, because this is maddening.